Thanks a lot for the very Thanks a lot for the very kind words and the very kind presentation. It's a pleasure to be here. In fact, the time of this virtual club coincides with our internal journal club. It's a bit of a pity that we cannot synchronize, but that's life. And in any case, so I will now share my it's in fact a little bit similar to what I presented to the hub. So I will describe a little bit what has been the Brain Imaging Network of Portugal. So this is basically a scientific network with a core infrastructure in Coimbra. So the core infrastructure is seated at the University of Coimbra, but we have users from many places, as I will describe. So what is special about our infrastructure? So we are seated in this building that I hope many of you can at some point visit. And this is where we are located. So we are in a university campus. So this building here is our research building, so it's both an infrastructure, but also hosts a research institute called CBIT, which is devoted exactly, I would say, to almost all work packages of Eurobioimaging, because in fact, some of our collaborators also participate in another Portuguese node, which is the Portuguese node for biological imaging. So this is our academic institute. This is the Faculty of Medicine, Pharmacy. This is the big hospital, the main hospital. This is the pediatric hospital. And this is the oncology hospital. So within a very small area, we have many patients that actually come to our institute. So we have a research and clinical protocol with the hospital. So this is basically, this is an ideal node to do clinical imaging. Well, our focus is on neuroscience, but we do a lot in oncology and cardiology. And of course, as I will explain later, we also have facilities to do animal imaging and molecular biology. So it's really, I would say, a translational research node. Sorry. So what are the resources and how do we manage this infrastructure? So we have different types of teams. So we have a clinical team. So with nurses, radiographers, nuclear medicine. So we have a technical and administrative staff, but we also have staff dedicated to science and technology, more to technical aspects. So we have a small company, that's what in the middle, a small company devoted to the production of radiopharmaceuticals for research. But also we have a business plan where the reminiscent radiopharmaceuticals can be distributed. So this is in fact an infrastructure that has a business plan that makes it self-sustainable. So although we have many grants, as I will explain later, our business plan allows it to work even if there is a crisis in terms of scientific grants. So the scientific grants are mainly for the users, to pay scanning time. And so we have research groups, the bottom panel, we have activities dedicated to spinning off, and we have several research contracts. So what are our core facilities? So this node is mainly dedicated to PET and MR in animal and humans, but we have a lot of equipment surrounding the PET and MR. So for instance, our MR is equipped with state-of-the-art eye tracking. So we can, and EEG. So this means that we can do these imaging protocols concomitantly with many other physiological techniques. For instance, we can now, very recently, we installed a TMS, a transcranial magnetic stimulation device, that we can do simultaneously with MRI. So a user that is interested in neurostimulation inside the scanner to know what brain circuits are activated by neurostimulation, this can be done. And we also have FNIRS technology that, so a user that is interested in knowing what he can achieve with FNIRS and with fMRI. So we could have a user doing both fMRI and FNIRS and then try to relate the modalities. We also have virtual reality setups. And I'm not detailing here other technologies like photoacoustic imaging because so far they are more for internal use, but we expect some of these technologies also to become available to external users. We do a lot of radiopharmaceutical production because we have 2 cyclotrons, and we often have users that want a particular type of labeling being done to a particular type of molecule. So we have carbon-11, oxygen. We also do ammonium imaging, in fact. So users that are we also have copper-64. So users for more for a marker of oxidative stress. So we have a lot of industry users that contact us for particular molecular imaging applications. We even have projects related to testing in animals, but then planning first in human use. So this is the type of resources and facilities we have. One thing that we do not yet have is an hybrid PET-MR scanner. That's something that we are planning to apply for the next national call for re-equipment. Okay, I give you another thing that we try to do is that to have the possibility to study the same animal model of the human disease we are studying. So, which is quite interesting for the industry. Imagine that there is a new radiopharmaceutical to study neurodegenerative disorders. In fact, we are now just starting a project with a company that wants to label nanobodies so is trying to use therapeutic targets for Alzheimer's disease. And we are starting a project in animals with this company, but the idea is to do a first in human phase 0 study with the labeled nanobody. So I just give you an example of one of such projects. So we have in our animal facility, animal model for neurofibromatosis. So this is a neurodevelopmental disorder that is also a model for autism spectrum disorders. And basically in this disorder, it's known that there is excessive RAS activation. This is also relevant for tumorigenesis, and then this leads to excessive GABA receptor activation and inhibition. So we have been studying this animal model using several techniques, but we also translated this into the human disease. So in the human disease, we did in animals and humans, we applied the similar types of techniques like structural imaging, neurospectroscopy, so like selecting a region in the brain to measure metabolites like GABA, and then molecular imaging using flumazenil labeled with carbon-11 to look at GABA receptors. And in the same project, we also did fMRI to look at brain activation in oculomotor networks. So we have this ability in this node to apply in the same patient all these techniques and then to compare in animals. And so to validate mechanisms of disease and to identify therapeutic targets in animals that then we can also study in humans. In fact, we have been doing this. We have been using neurostimulation, but also drugs like statins. And we have applied these therapies both in animals and humans, and then look at the therapeutic effects using behavioral assessments. But this is just an example. And some projects, these are scientific projects, but other projects are really negotiated with the industry. And so this is really a characteristic of the node, is that we have companies interested in this type of approach. So doing that, we could actually do in animals. So you can relate molecular biology phenotypes at the level of the synapses, like looking at GABA receptor density. But we can also look from the molecular imaging point of view, study this density, or looking at GABA concentration using neurospectroscopy. So we believe we are suited for users interested in translational research projects, both in animals and in humans. But of course, we are gathering a lot of data in humans. So at the moment, our node is more a technology access node, but we have the goal of becoming also a data access mode, because we have been gathering imaging data since 2008. And so we are planning to actually to have a certified data center where people can reuse these, for instance, these human molecular imaging data. I just give you an example of a Marie Curie project. So we have actually a collaboration with the University of Maastricht. And so there was a PhD from the University of Maastricht that applied for a Marie Curie grant to use our infrastructure in patients. So he did not have access to patients in Maastricht. So he applied for a grant, and we developed a complex multimodal protocol to study the effects of neurostimulation, the mechanisms of action of TMS in the parietal lobe. So we had a very complex protocol. So in the same day, the patients, so this is the timeline of what the patients had to do in one day. So they would come, do the neuropsychological evaluation, do an interview with a medical doctor, and then they would have a therapeutic protocol applied to the left hemisphere of the brain. And then we would do PET just after neurostimulation. And then a second session of TMS. So one TMS would be placebo, the other would be the active treatment. Then another PET assessment with the GABA receptor. So we wanted to know whether the TMS protocol would change the GABA receptor binding. And then we had an MR, so the patients would do an MR where we would do structural, functional, and neurochemical assessment. Then there would be rest, and then there will be another protocol in the afternoon. So this is the type of intensive protocol that we can do in the same day, and then we can compare what happens with TMS off on TMS on, and we can relate. For instance, we note that with TMS on, there is, well, with TMS on, we see that there is a decrease in excitatory neurotransmission. So we see a decrease in glutamatergic species, and we see that there is an increased correlation between GABA receptor binding and GABA levels. So this is the type of multimodal study that we can do. And of course, once we get the hybrid PET-MR, we can even go further. I just show you one of the results with the fMRI. So here you see that when the TMS is off, you basically have only unilateral activation. But when the TMS is on, we have bilateral activation. This is in patients with stroke. This means that with our TMS protocol, we can recover brain activity in the lesion hemisphere. You can also see that here, that with TMS on, you have brain activity in both hemispheres. So you can really look at mechanisms of action of neurostimulation in the brain. These are just images of the PET GABA receptor with TMS on and off. And this is the brain regions that show an interaction between brain activity and TMS. So this is one type of project that can be done. These are just images of a spectroscopy. So we have Since we have a research agreement with Siemens, which is the manufacturer that provided our scanner, we can put what we call work in progress sequences, the so-called WIP, to measure GABA. And now we have a new sequence where we can separate GABA and glutathione simultaneously. And the glutathione is very much suited when you are interested in things such as oxidative stress. So we also have a technical expertise to help people quantify, so doing image or signal processing in different types of, so we really can provide technical support in these aspects. This is another example where we apply PET and MRI in the same patients. So this is in Parkinson's disease, where we have an fMRI protocol to map oculomotor regions, so regions involved in eye movement control, such as the frontal eye fields and the parietal eye fields. And then we can ask in Parkinson patients if the dopaminergic network changes in this disease. So we can ask if from the fMRI point of view, there are changes, but then we can do molecular imaging to see if the dopaminergic network reorganizes. And this is just one example. I will not, we found that there was a reorganization. So basically, we found that the molecular pattern of connectivity between regions rich in dopamine in the basal ganglia, they reconnect to the posterior areas of the brain to compensate for the lack of in the anterior areas in Parkinson's disease. So this is really a key signature of our node. We have many users requesting both MR and PET. This is another area. So I talked that we work a lot with users studying neurodevelopmental disorders like autism spectrum disorder. In fact, we are engaged in projects where there is multimodal imaging in neurodevelopmental disorders. Actually, there is a European consortium called the AIMS2 trials. This is a consortium of about 60 partners doing imaging in autism spectrum disorders, and we are doing a lot of data sharing within these consortia. So another area that we work is Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment. So we are trying to look for functional imaging markers of early cognitive deficit. So this is one marker that we find is the activation in the frontoparietal network as a network that activates to compensate for early cognitive deficit in mild cognitive impairment, which can occur just prior to the onset of Alzheimer's disease. So we do functional imaging in neurodegenerative disorders, but also molecular imaging. In this case, we use a tracer labeled with carbon-11 to label accumulation of amyloid in the brain, in particular brain regions such as the posterior cingulate and the anterior cingulate. So with this tracer, we have more than now than 1,000 patients measured with this tracer, which makes us suitable for data access services. And in fact, we are sharing this data already across the European consortium. In many of these patients, we fuse MR and PET data. This is just one example. And we do that, as I said before, also with dopamine. So we have already a reasonable database with D2 receptors in many types of Parkinsonian syndromes. And then we use machine learning algorithms. So that's an expertise we have, machine learning algorithms to classify different types of Parkinsonian syndromes. So as I say, we share a lot of data. This is just an example where we share amyloid imaging data with other groups. And we try to share with groups working with other types of facilities like biobanks. And this is one paper in the line of those types of collaboration. We also develop particular expertise in sensory mapping. So our node, if people are interested in data related to mapping different visual regions like retinotopic visual regions. So we have protocols where we can do this type of mapping, and in fact, we have large databases now, how these brain regions age. So that's also an area, sensory mapping. We are also trying to extend not just in terms of vision, but also somatosensory and auditory mapping. And so this is also a strength we have at our node, sensory mapping, in particular visual mapping. So as I said, we have been very much involved in projects where we do multimodal imaging in neurodegenerative disorders. So one particular example is mapping in Alzheimer's disease patients, doing neurospectroscopy to measure GABA, but also doing a functional MRI to map region if they are responding to particular type of objects such as faces or my internet. I hope you are hearing me. My internet connection complained. Can you hear me? For a moment.
Yes, with some problem. You're right. In the last couple of minutes, there are problems. But anyway.
So maybe I changed my network for a minute. It was 1 minute or was more than that?
1 minute. 1 minute.
Yeah. Okay. So do you mind if I change my network? Because I have a better network.
Okay, please do it.
Yeah. Can you hear me again?
Yes, very well.
Okay, now, so you stopped hearing me in which slide? This one? Could you hear me when I was explaining this slide?
Yes, we get very well the explanation for this slide, the collaboration with the biobank.
Yeah, okay, so I continue here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will briefly summarize what I was saying in this slide. So we have special protocols to identify visual brain regions. So we can map, so a strength of our node is to map sensory areas. So we have protocols to map like V1, V2, V3, so sensory regions, and we are extending our expertise to other sensory regions like the auditory cortex and also the somatosensory cortex. This is very important for users that are working on brain plasticity and to see how visual maps change. Okay, and I was then saying that we do, as I said, we have a strong emphasis on multimodal imaging in neurodegenerative disorders. And this is an example of a project where we did fMRI in Alzheimer's disease, studying how brain regions respond to different types of objects. We did structural imaging, we did spectroscopy, and we did molecular imaging. So molecular imaging of amyloid on the right, but also molecular imaging of neuroinflammation. So this means that we have unique data sets that can be shared, where we do MRI and PET with many different modalities. And I will give you some examples of what we can learn from that. For instance, we can ask questions like, is amyloid deposition related with neuroinflammation? Or we can study questions like, and that's related to our methodological expertise, we do quantitative imaging. So this means that we can extract parameters like perfusion parameters from the amyloid images, Like we have a parameter called R1 and another one called the perfusion parameter. And then we ask questions such as, do these parameters relate with metabolism? If they relate with metabolisms, we don't need anymore to do FDG imaging. So instead of doing FDG and PIB imaging, we just do PIB imaging and we get the metabolism parameter out of the same tracer, doing dynamic imaging. So that's a kind of stuff we do, because if you want to do multimodal imaging, if you want to study metabolism, amyloid deposition, and brain atrophy, in the end, patients are doing 3 different types of scans. What we try to do is to optimize quantitative imaging so that from the same type of scan, you can extract multiple parameters that give you multiple types of information. And we can do that because we have data from different modalities in patients, and then we can optimize to reduce the number of imaging sessions. As I said before, we are working a lot on data-driven diagnostic classification using different artificial intelligence, machine learning approaches. So that's something we are doing a lot. And we do that both in humans, but also in animals. So we have people here working with machine learning, trying to get information from animal imaging as well. So here I give you an example of comparing information, structural information, so gray matter, changes in Alzheimer's disease patients. Here, amyloid, and on the right, neuroinflammation using a tracer called PK. So you can see that the changes in inflammation in the brain in Alzheimer's diseases are much more subtle, okay? But they are still relevant. In fact, the changes in inflammation occur in the brain regions that have a higher amount of amyloid load. So there is a relation between inflammation and amyloid deposition, in particular in regions that have a huge amyloid burden. And that's exactly this region here, the posterior cingulate. This is a region in the brain where there is huge amyloid burden, but there is also increased inflammation. And actually there is increased also brain activity in an fMRI task where we see a compensatory brain activation. So in the same region, we see increased amyloid deposition, increased inflammation, and increased brain activity. We interpreted it maybe as a compensation for a functional failure of this region. This is information that you can only get if you do multimodal imaging. So as I said, we are doing lots of studies in the visual brain areas, in sensory regions. We are also studying aging across these regions. And this is very important for projects where you want users from different sites, where they use the same protocol, because there are now many consortia working on healthy and pathological aging. And we are trying to optimize the expertise of the node to have all these acquisitions, all these technologies, but also analysis methods available. Another imaging modality we have is optical coherence tomography. This is not a technology that we are offering for external users, although we can do that if there are external users interested, but we can provide data where we can offer this data. This is actually from the retina, so this technology is available for retinal imaging, but we have data where we also have brain imaging data. And so this is data that we, in the future, will be able also to share. As I said, we are not only doing brain, we are doing also heart dynamic imaging, both in MR, and we also do molecular imaging using tracers where we can, for instance, measure active atherosclerotic plaque. So the same concept of doing PET and MR in the brain, we also apply we apply to the heart. And we have many industry users interested in this kite. And we just got a research contract with AstraZeneca to test the role of a statin on the inflamed plaque. So going more to how these node is organized from the point of view of technology facilities, but also research. So basically we have preclinical, molecular and functional imaging pillar. We have neuroimaging and clinical neuroscience, but then we have a lot of machine learning technology available. So what we call radiomics, applied both to human and animal data. And this puts us at a particular strength for technology transfer, both internally and externally. So we have our own molecular imaging patent to produce gallium-68 based on the cyclotron. And actually one of the cyclotrons we have here is a dual energy cyclotron. It's a collaboration with IBA, one of the major cyclotron manufacturers. So we have several patents resulting from the activities we have here. I will not go into the full details, but so that's a particular aspect of the node, that we interact with many companies and we have patents that we are sharing with some of these companies. So this node is actually related to other European ERICs. So we have a connection with EATRIS. So our research institute, CBIT, is part of the Portuguese node that is linked to the EATRIS. So it's an European infrastructure for translational medicine. And we have a local clinical trial unit that prepares clinical trials, both internal and external. So we have like project management, data management, quality management. And then we relate with the Portuguese branch of the ECRIN, which is the European Clinical Trial Infrastructure Network. So in other words, we of course relate to Eurobioimaging, but we have activities that relate to other European infrastructures. And so we have several clinical trials running related to imaging, where imaging is a readout for the effects of medical devices like the neurostimulation that I was talking about. But we also have trials with radiopharmaceuticals. As I was mentioning, for instance, this trial here, the effects of rosuvastatin on the atherosclerotic plaque. So, as I said before, so our node provides preclinical research, molecular imaging, and functional imaging services, but also research. Then the neuroimaging and clinical neuroscience, with a link with medical device validation. And then the machine learning and radiomics work package. So this is how our research is structured. We have a strong interest in technology transfer. And for instance, we had a project with Siemens, and actually we have 2 PhD students funded by Siemens, where we try to have projects focused at development of intellectual property. And we have an internal intellectual property task force. And this leads then to several research contracts. Actually, we have 3 spin-offs, but then some research contracts with industry partners. So we had actually an external contractor, the Perspectum. This is a spin-off from the University of Oxford, where they contracted actually imaging service, actually for the liver imaging. So they developed a new method to diagnose liver inflammation without the need for biopsy. And so this was an SMA H2020 project where they subcontracted our node, in fact. And so this is the type of activities we are trying to pursue all the time. We have a training program, and I know that we have now to disseminate this training program within Eurobioimaging. That's something that we still need to know. So we are credited by the International Agency for Atomic Energy to give courses. So this is basically our molecular imaging people like Antero Abrunhosa. So we are giving lots of courses in the framework of this agency. But we have also our internal courses that we now also want to offer to Eurobioimaging. We are involved in several doctoral programs where we have students also coming from abroad. And we have, as I say, also partnerships, not just with companies, but also with patient associations. So we have a lot of science dissemination of the activities that like patient associations where we explain, for instance, the role of imaging, and clinical trials where imaging is a readout. That's something we do a lot. We have, and this is very important for the node, these partners at an international level. And so we lead the national roadmap in terms of imaging, which enabled us, for instance, to have a national project of excellence with five research institutes using a lot of imaging within this consortium. So this is basically what I wanted to tell. I don't know how we are in time. But so basically there is here the Eurobioimaging, but we try to relate our activity within Eurobioimaging with other consortium to increase the impact of the node, both at the scientific and technological level. And so we believe that being a European node within Eurobioimaging is very important for our strategy. So this is basically what I wanted to share with you. So these are the keywords of the node. And so I would be very happy to answer questions regarding this presentation.